And joining us now, she is one of the most decorated, if not the most decorated, UCF rower of all time. She was the first rower to become a three-time All-American. She, of course, was at UCF. Going back to the 2006 to 2008 era, of course, led them to their NCAA tournament appearance in 2007. And at the time, their highest ranking ever in the polls and ranked number 9. She was there from '04, one of the greats of all time. I speak of Krystina Sarff, who joins us here. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
So let's kind of start at the beginning here. How did you end up at UCF, and then how did you end up being a rower?
Yeah, so kind of an interesting story, but I think a lot of rowers that are, starting off in college kind of have, different stories of how they got into the sport. I actually started as a freshman at the University of Florida, and I was trying to make the swim team there. And so I had an aerobic kind of training background. And my roommate at the time in January of my freshman year said, "Hey, why don't you come out to this rowing tryout that the club team at Florida is having?" And UF only had a club team. And so I went to this meeting with her and I had no clue, anything about it. And they were like, "Oh, you have to do this. You're tall, you have to do this." And so I joined and I loved it. And about a month into joining the team, I went to an erg competition out in Melbourne over at Florida Tech. And I was scouted by Stephen Casey, who was one of the coaches at UCF at the time. And he asked me to come out and, come on an official visit. And I went to UCF and I went to Miami on official visits. And the team environment was just absolutely awesome. I had my host at the time was Melissa Kroll, so I'm going to shout out to her. She was amazing, and I just felt like the second I got to UCF, it felt like home, and I felt like I really belonged there. And the coaching staff was awesome. And I transferred to UCF and started in August 2004, and it was an incredible experience. I loved every second there.
So describe, for those that may not be aware, especially our younger audience, describe what the campus was like when you first started coming to UCF in August of '04. It's a little different than it is now.
Yeah. So actually, the towers didn't exist where the athletes stay now. Like we stayed over, I think I'm not sure if they're still there. It was Nike dorms and like Hercules. So we stayed over there on the other side of campus. That was a lot of fun. There were less parking garages back in that age. But I think like the feel and the walkability of UCF, you still got your campus loop, that's like 2.5 miles around or whatever it is. So like that is all still the same. So when I come back and visit, like I still get that good feeling. But there also wasn't the whole like light up UCF area, like the old UCF arena was still there, and they had just started to like work on tearing that down like halfway through my time there. And then the UCF arena went up, and a lot of fun things there. But a lot more parking garages, different buildings now, and everything. But still like home. When I go back, it feels awesome still.
Now, describe what the program UCF Rowing was at that time, because now a lot of people know it for the success they've had under head coach Becky Kramer, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Obviously, being contenders in the NCAA tournament now in a perennial year. Like this year was kind of a big story that they didn't make it because they lost in the American Conference Championships to SMU and things like that. But what was UCF Rowing like back then when you arrived there on campus and started to help build what they really kind of helped that beginning of the success of the program there?
Yeah, so UCF had a new head coach, Leanne Crane, for a year prior before I got there. So it was her second year when I joined the team, and there was just a lot of like momentum going upward. But NCAA rowing in general has changed so much since the time I was on the team. Like the way you qualify for the NCAA championship is totally different now compared to then. Back then, like in the '04-'08 eras, like there were 12 teams that qualified for the NCAA championship, and it wasn't based on conference championships. Like we didn't even have a conference championship when I was a rower. We were part of Conference USA, but there was no Conference USA championship because there just wasn't enough schools that had rowing teams to do that. So we would go to this South Central competition, which had it was kind of a mix of like Big Ten schools, some like SEC schools, like Tennessee, they had a team, and or they still have a team. And, so kind of what you were saying, it was sort of this like hodgepodge of everybody that was in this like Midwest, North, South, East area. And so we would all race, and like that would all help you get a vote, like, or like gain confidence, right, in your performance and everything, and where you were ranked, because everything was based on polls then. Like if you were in, the top 20, it was because of a poll, not because you won your conference championship or anything like that. So they would select 12 teams, and then there was 4 at-large 8s. So in 2007, we got a bid for an at-large 8. And there was only then 16 varsity 8s that were competing, compared to now there's 22 full teams that get to go, and 11 of them now you get an automatic qualifier if you win your conference championship of the 11 conferences, and then there's 11 at-large teams that go after that. So it's really awesome for the growth of women's rowing and women's sports that like so many more young women get to go to the NCAA championship, but it was super limited back then. So it made it even more special when we were able to qualify and go back in 2007, because we had really, really been striving for that. But every race counted so much to try to get to that championship. And we traveled all over the country in 2007 to be able and race like really big, like top ranked teams on the West Coast and the East Coast, like everywhere to try to get that bid. And when we got ranked 9th, it was absolutely incredible. And we had beat Virginia, which Kevin Sauer is still the head coach there, and he's an awesome coach and everything. But it was such a big deal that we had ranked this top ranked team, and that's really what like started launching us into that top 10. Really good back in the spring of 2007. But yeah, a lot has changed. A lot more young women able to compete in the NCAA championship now, which is great.
Yeah, it's grown, and you've seen it as a coach as well recently there. But so you mentioned there you run. Now describe your role, because I think a lot of casual rowing fans, when they really know more about the boat, they don't know the individuals, their roles specifically. They kind of like, oh well, the boat, how did it do and how did it do? But you got recognized individually. You became a 3-time All-American by the time of your career, the first ever UCF. Only Julie Polson since has kind of been in that same radar as far as being, awarded as many awards as you have in your career. Like you two are probably the standards as far as individual rowers from an accomplishment standpoint. Just describe your role, and that was really pivotal, because obviously you were one of the top rowers in the country.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's beautiful about this sport is the team aspect of it, right? But there is, a lot of individual work that goes into it. And I have to give a big shout out to my one of my best friends and teammates, Caitlin Pauls, because like I think the two of us individually like pushed the team a lot back in the day. But as far as like individually, like what we were doing, yes, we're all in a boat, and that's like when we go and race, that's what the fans or that's what the parents' families, that's what we all see. But so much work goes into the ergometer or the erg. What you see people doing at CrossFit and that kind of stuff right now, it's kind of growing in popularity. But we put so many meters and hours and minutes onto that erg, like every day, every week over the course of a year. And so when they, one of the components that goes into selecting an All-American is like meeting certain standards or, hitting certain time standards on the erg. So at the time, I was the fastest person at UCF on the erg. And actually, I still have the records in rowing, there's like specific tests that are kind of like commonalities amongst all like rowers, like it's a 2K test, so it's how fast can you do 2,000 meters on an erg. And that's like, you can talk to somebody that's in high school, you can talk to somebody that's a master's rower. And if you say, oh, what's your 2K time? That's kind of something that like everybody knows what it is. And like the US national team looks at that kind of stuff too. So I had the record back. I got the record back in 2007 for the 2,000 meter and the 6,000 meter erg pieces, and I still hold those now, actually. And you have to like enter those as part of like your All-American consideration, and also like results, and just I think the coach usually writes like a recommendation for you as well. But yeah, that's how kind of the individual aspect of things went as far as like how you're qualifying for that. But the faster, like in theory, like the faster you're pushing on the erg a lot of times, that's, in hopes, like as a coach and as a rower, that's going to translate to boat speed. And it's not like an exact science. Like, if you pull this, you automatically pull this in the boat. But it's like, the goal is that that's what's happening. But, the faster and more fit you are on the erg, the faster, and, in theory, you're making the boat go as well. But yeah, a lot of individual hours. You're training on your own a lot too, just putting in extra workouts, and you're doing stuff with the team, but you're also just putting in time on your own and taking care of yourself. And yeah, but it was an awesome experience, like putting in all that work and being a part of that training and being a part of an awesome team. And a lot of awesome teammates. Also, Caitlin Paul's sister, Steph Paul's, like she was part of that crew too. Like all the women that were in that boat in 2007, like just incredible journey with all of them. Your sound went out. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
There you go. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
there you go.
technology. There's technology there. What was it about 07 that made it so special and broke through to make? I mean, what was that like? How did you all find out? Hey, we're going to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I still remember that day when we found out we were going. A lot of tears, a lot of screaming, and like just very, very excited. But honestly, it had been like an upward build for the 3 years prior. It didn't just like all of a sudden happen that year. I give a lot of credit to our upperclassmen the 2 years prior. I thought we had great leaders, like Kristen Roach is somebody that stands out in my mind, Tanya Kleisler, like just these awesome leaders that were leading the team to set up to be able to do that in 2007. We had, I would say in 2006 spring, it was a lot of like really close races where we were just on the losing side, right? Like we were going really fast and almost beating these big teams, almost getting them. And then it was like the next year, spring 2007, it was like, we got on the other side of the coin now. Now we're the ones beating the teams by a second or two instead of losing by a second or two, right? And it was just like a lead up from like 2 years prior of just like the momentum and just like saying every workout we're doing is NCAA championship. Every workout we're doing is to try to get our team to the championship. And the day we found out, actually, we got to the NCAA championship, or we received a bid for it, we were over at the softball stadium. I think it was like kind of fairly new then, if my memory serves me correctly. A lot of like construction was going on then.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah, the towers I think had just been built or were being built at that time. So we all went over there and we were in a conference room, all like huddled around like a phone, and like just on a speakerphone, and they were going through who was getting called, and we just like all screamed and broke out, and like it was awesome. I have some pictures from that time, and we're all just like dancing down the street, like going back to our dorms, but super excited. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's a little different now. Like now they kind of announce everything on NCAA.com, so it's like a TV show. It's like a show, and everybody gets together in like restaurants or whatever, and you watch it. So wow, I do. And hey, that softball complex opened in March of 07. So
yeah, okay, that makes sense then.
It was a long time coming there. Talk about the staff. You mentioned Becky Crane, who was the head coach, and I think it's important because obviously after UCF, she would about a year or so later she would end up going to Oklahoma, I believe, right, to take over that program.
Leanne Crane.
Leanne Crane. Yeah. What did I got him confused? There you go. I know who I got in my mind. I got Becky Kramer in my mind because she was on that staff and would eventually take over for Crane. Just to kind of explain that.
Yeah, so my last year at UCF, and so I finished my eligibility in 2008. Coach Crane got an offer to start up the program at the University of Oklahoma. So Oklahoma didn't have a team or anything, so it was totally starting from scratch. So she went there. And then during that year, Becky was able to take over the program. And I just remember like all of us were super supportive of her. Becky had been like an awesome technical coach, I felt like, for me when I was at UCF. And always somebody like her door was always open. You could always go in there and like chat with her about anything. And she was an awesome novice coach. I know like we had such great novice teams when I was at UCF. And so many of our novice athletes like became these amazing varsity athletes. Like Melissa Westhoff comes to mind. Like she was in that varsity 8 in 2007, and she was just this like all around fantastic, awesome teammate. Erin Regal as well. She was another like awesome like from the novice program athlete, and all of us that were like novices originally, starting in college, you always have that kind of like bond and, just like we're all new to the sport kind of, right? So really, really good stuff. Great staff. And then we also had Andy Derrick was on staff. He was awesome. Like Corey McGrath. And we have really good people. And I always felt like we could talk to any of the staff like anytime. And everybody just was super committed. And it was a great just feeling as an athlete, knowing you could stop by any of the coaches' doors anytime and like, watch a video. Kim Capini too. Sorry to mention.
There you go.
Kim Capini was like a super big mentor for me. I was in her office like so much all the time.
Right. Now, what was Coach Kramer's first year there?
I think she started fall 2003.
Wow. It's kind of wild. She's like a lifer.
Yeah.
I'm just curious from afar because, like I said, you've gone, eventually you've been recently coaching at Oklahoma and been a part of it. What have you seen from her? Are you surprised at the success she had? Did you kind of foreshadow her to have the success and taking the rowing program to the high levels that it's been here in the last decade?
Yeah. So when I was an athlete, and rowing for Coach Crane, there was never any cap on anything I wanted to do. So if I went into her office and said, well, I did have this conversation, I want to go to the Olympics. And she was like, okay. There was never oh yeah, that's not possible, type of thing. Or if I'd go in there and say, all right, we need to really get the team going on this, or, I think we really should push on this. And let's talk rowing, let's look at the boat and see what we can do to make the boat faster. Or anything I ever proposed, wanted to talk out, her door was always open. And I think that type of culture and environment promotes a lot of just self-leadership too within the team. Caitlin and I pushed a lot, with our teammates and everything. And it was very much she helped us take the reins on a lot of things because she was so supportive of everything that we did.
We're going to be approaching 15-year anniversary of that 07 year, by the way. Does it seem like it was yesterday? Does it?
Yeah.
How does?
Yeah, it does. And when you say the 15 years, I just remember it was just 10 years also. And I don't know where the time goes, but I remember being at UCF and thinking love every second. And I remember actively trying to embrace the moment all the time and just remember what was happening because I loved it so much. And it still wasn't enough, right? I'm oh, could I have squeezed more out of it, right? But I just loved it so much, and that stays with you, I think, over all the years. I have such positive memories of being there.
When's the last time you got to visit UCF campus?
We actually, when I was with Oklahoma coaching there, we took a training trip. January 2019. Yeah, January 2019. So I was there then. It's always good to go home. It's so you just. Lake Pickett is, I know it like the back of my hand from rowing there so long. And so it just feels very comfortable when I get to go back.
What was your reaction now when you see the campus and what it's become now and the facilities and what even the UCF rowers now have that you didn't have, quite frankly, honestly?
So I guess that's another big contrast I didn't mention earlier is that UCF has a boathouse, which I was training there, trying to make the U.S. national team the year after I graduated. So I was able to use the boathouse as an athlete, but not as a UCF rower. But that is something that's super awesome. The women on the team that were older than me at the time, really pushed for that, and then my class carried it on as well to try to keep pushing to have a boathouse. So I'm just so excited that they don't know anything different, right? We used to operate. It was kind of rough. We would operate off of a trailer for a while, and then we got the half silo that is currently there now. That was our boathouse for a couple of years. We used to have a big circus tent type of thing too, or a party tent, and all of our stuff was set up there. And one thing that people miss out on now is having to do the annual August come back to school boat cleaning and clean out the critters that had built little nests in the boats because all the boats were just sitting outside, right, all summer. So that was always fun, and like you just get down and gritty and dirty when you're cleaning all that. But it's good character building, right? But yeah, and when I come back to campus, like I always had this like hope and vision that UCF would continue to grow and like just become more and more. And I feel like it is doing that. Like President Hitt did so much for the university and had such vision for it, that it's just super impressive. Like I'm just really proud to have gone to UCF and to see what it continues to become.
Yeah, no, it's been tremendous. Have you had a chance to go to a football game yet at the Bounce House? Because you didn't, when you were there for the most time, they didn't have a football stadium until the fall of '07.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, so we did get to go. I remember going to that Texas game. That
okay.
was huge.
Yep.
And my sister Samantha was also on the rowing team, and her and my friend Caitlin, who was also on the team, they used to go and stake out at the game really, really early, and to get really good seats, they go right after Saturday practice, and then I would stroll over a little bit later. But their claim to fame is that for a while UCF stopped playing Zombie Nation because of the bounce effect that it was having.
Yeah, the
So
Fifth Stadium. Yeah.
students, yeah, the students would start it up, and my sister and Caitlin were so like responsible for starting that up. Like the student would, when they would chant it, like they would get it going so many times, and it was just a lot of fun. Like you couldn't stop the students. They may not have played the music, but like we were going to bounce to that song when UCF had a touchdown.
It's trust me, they've added some things since, so you should probably come back to another game here soon.
Yeah, I
They've
would
added
love
some
to.
new elements there. Tell us what you've been up to since UCF, since your obviously your career kind of ended at UCF. What because obviously we mentioned coaching, but now you're doing a new venture. But just try to take us through what you've been doing over the last say 13 years, I guess, in a short time.
Yeah,
For those
yeah.
that are curious.
Yeah, so after I finished my eligibility at UCF, I tried to make the U.S. national team, and I had been kind of a part of those selection processes during my time at UCF. And then I kind of like hung up my orders, if you want to call it that, or I retired um, about a year and a half after I stopped rowing at UCF. And I started to pursue my doctorate in sport management at the University of Florida. And I did that. I graduated in 2015 from that. But while I was doing that, the University of Florida's club team, which is where I got my start in rowing, needed a coach. And so I started to coach at the University of Florida while I was doing my doctorate there. And when I finished all my coursework, Kim Capini, who I mentioned earlier, was the head coach for rowing at the University of San Diego at the time. And she gave me a call because I told her how much I love coaching and that I actually wanted to pursue that at that point and instead of going into academia and being a professor. And she's like, I've got this position open. Would you want to come out to California and work for me? And I said, yes. So I worked for Kim for a year out in the University of San Diego for the rowing team there. And then after that year, University of Michigan, which is just perennially a top 10 team or top 5 team most years, had this position open. And I applied for this position, I didn't know if I had a chance at it at all, but I ended up getting the position at the University of Michigan. And I had an absolutely incredible experience coaching under Mark Rothstein. He's an incredible human being. Learned a ton of values about ownership and just taking a lot of responsibility as a coach in character building and leadership development with our student athletes, and truly credit Mark with helping me become a better person for sure, and helping all our athletes become better people too. Super believe in everything that Michigan is doing. He's awesome. And then, but Coach Crane all this time, right, has been at the University of Oklahoma coaching there. And she had asked me a couple of times, like, oh, hey, would you want to come work for me? And the timing was never exactly right. But then the timing and everything kind of just worked out. And she asked me in 2018 to come work for her at OU. And so I left Michigan and went to OU to work for her, and was able to be a part of this really awesome staff with Guillermo Lemos, Stephen and Rebecca George. I had worked with Guillermo at University of San Diego, and he's amazing. And the whole staff there was really amazing. We really enjoyed working together. And COVID made things a little bit weird, in the middle, right? We had a very non-traditional year kind of in the middle when I was there. So I'd been there for the past 3 years and working to build the team and just, gain recruiting and everything there. Um, but I kind of made just different priorities and stuff, kind of with COVID happening and probably just getting older, right? I wanted to be near my family. And my family, I actually grew up outside of Chicago, even though like all my schooling was in Florida. Born in Florida, but raised outside of Chicago. And there was a position at North Central College, which is about an hour from where I grew up, for a sport management professor position. And I applied here and I was able to get the job here. So I am currently a visiting assistant professor of sport management, and I'm really loving everything here right now. And I'm able to do a lot of the like kind of DEI work too that I've been doing like through my coaching and athletics career, and apply a lot of it to the classroom now. So I'm really excited about that.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing there. And that's a tremendous accomplishment. I'm curious, how has rowing changed from your days? You obviously were part of it as an athlete to now, obviously, we're recently as a coach. Obviously, it's grown a lot. I mean, I've watched rowing, UCF rowing, every time they're competing in the American Conference Championship because it's streamed. It was like this past year was ESPN
Yeah,
Plus.
yeah.
It's got more coverage now than maybe it did back when you were rowing. Obviously, how has it changed? How has it grown as a sport from your vantage point?
Yeah, it's awesome. Even just like youth nationals, like a couple weeks ago, we're on ESPN Plus. I couldn't believe it. That was just awesome to see. But just the fact that we have like, announcers now and everything that, that you can just watch on the NCAA website. I mean, that was something we didn't, have access to when I was rowing. Honestly, from the coaching perspective, the growth of juniors rowing has been really big. Like there's a lot more teams now at the high school level, feeding into the college programs than when I was in college. And just the speeds of the teams, honestly, are getting faster. Every year it's like you have to just keep pushing for that little notch more, right, to try to keep adding speed. The one thing I think that's really cool, though, that has really evolved, I think, across all sports is like looking at an athlete as like a whole being, though. You're more than just like your performance, right? There's like this nutritional component, there's the sleep component, there's
Yeah.
the mental and emotional well-being. And we didn't really talk about that kind of stuff as much, right? It was like, oh, make sure you're eating balanced meals, that type of thing, make sure you get sleep. But like the in-depth like nutrition talks that we're able to have with athletes now, and just kind of seeing them holistically more, and also like the focus on like DEI too that the athletes are able to get now, and the mental health performance aspect thing, like all of that I think is just adding to speed. Honestly, when you look at an athlete more holistically like that, there's a lot of things I'm like, oh, if I would have known this
Right.
nutritionally, I'm like, or I wasn't drinking enough water. I like really don't think that now, right? But the athletes are so much more in tune, I think, with their like today than we just had access to, right? There's more information now.
Yeah, more information now than ever before. Couple last things before we let you go.
Yeah.
Leanne Crane, just describe what the impact she's made on UCF rowing. Obviously, Becky Kramer's taken it to the next level, but I think Coach Kramer would be the first to say, hey, it's Crane really was a big part of it as well. So just talk for those that may not be familiar with Leanne Crane, as
Yeah.
someone that not only obviously you were a rower under her and then you coached with her.
Yeah.
Describe her and the impact she's had for UCF and rowing.
Yeah. So I just think Coach Crane like built the momentum and laid the groundwork for UCF becoming what it is today. There was this, incredible momentum, through I would say like 2003 to 2008 when she was there, and it just laid a lot of foundation for everything to be built. And to have, the conference championships that UCF has now. I mean, she was a part of the integral work of like getting the boathouse, and going to a lot of meetings. I remember when like Steve Orsini was our athletic director
Yeah.
back then, and she got him, to come out to the boathouse or to boathouse where we rode. There was no boathouse then, but he came out and just like talked to our team, and so she did a lot of things like that. And just like I remember I had written a letter to the Olive Garden owners, like the Darden restaurants, just
Yeah.
asking for donations for like help us build our boathouse. I just remember asking her like, can I do that? And she's like, yeah, sure, go do that. And she just gave a lot of foundation to be able to be where they are today. And I don't think UCF would be what it is today without her there. She just totally changed the culture of what it was. It used to kind of, I think before I got there, there was a lot more like men's and women's like rowing mixed, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just that men's rowing doesn't have an NCAA championship,
Right.
so it's just different. Like the season's different, and there's just different competitors, and like there's a lot more like competitive women's teams, at the NCAA level. So she just shifted the focus to having like, all right, this is the women's NCAA team, and I'm going to build this championship, or build it up to a championship level team. And I just think it laid a lot of great groundwork.
No question. And then obviously had Becky Kramer on her staff who would take over. So, I mean, without that, there's no Coach Kramer.
Exactly.
It's kind of wild. I mean, it's the perfect kind of handoff, if you will. And with the great job that she's done. Again, you are the most decorated rower in the history of UCF. You're the only 3-time All-American. We've had Coach Kramer on recently. We both believe you should be in the UCF Athletic Hall of Fame down the road in the future, whenever that happens. What do you want people to say about you when people bring you up on campus and maybe near the rowing house, the boathouse and things like that? What do you want your legacy to be at UCF to people to know?
That I was a part of this incredible group of women that really like pushed and like just strive to make UCF rowing more than it was. I mean, every day, like we worked to get UCF rowing noticed, have recognition, get our faces out there, get our names out there, because we wanted to be at that NCAA championship. And I just feel like we pushed so hard for that, and we gave like everything. Like I like gave my soul to UCF when I was there for those 4 years, and I loved every second of it. And I would go back in a heartbeat if I could repeat all of it. But like just that I absolutely loved my time at UCF, and I gave so much to help it become the program that it is today. And that's like probably what a lot of athletes, would want, right? You help lay a foundation for the success a team has later on. And even if the other athletes don't know, that's kind of like what we used to talk about. We used to say like we would love like if all the women in the future had this boathouse and like they don't have to deal with whatever mosquitoes and like not having a shelter or whatever it is, like and having to be able to like get to good races and everything because your name is out there, right? Like you get invited to certain races because you're of a certain speed, right? And like you don't get invited unless you have that speed, and just that you can get those things now based on the work that we did just means a lot. And I'm very excited for the program and like what they've been doing lately and where they're going to continue to go.
Well, now that you're not in coaching, you can be more of a fan again. So
yeah, right. I can get my UCF night stuff back on.
That's right. Now we got to get Coach Kramer's got to invite you to come down. Especially, I'm just throwing it out there. 2022 is the 15-year anniversary of the 07 year. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I still can't believe that. It would be great to get like our whole boat back down. And we could all like hop in a boat. That would be super fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. It'd be great to have you here. The softball complex is kind of still the same like it was when you were here, so which probably is not a good thing, but we'll save it for another conversation. Krystina Sarff, 3-time All-American, UCF rower, joining us here. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thanks for everything you've done for UCF. I think a lot of rowers in the present kind of should thank you for everything you've done, and you and your group there back in those days to kind of pave the way for what they have now and the great tradition that UCF rowing has built over the last 15 years, 16 years, and you've been a big part of that. So this has been a blast. Great to talk to you, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you, Eric, so much, and go Knights.